During dinner, my husband's phone rang. I was about to grab his phone, which was next to a glass of water. As I reached out, I saw him tense up. We've known each other for 12 years, and I know him too well. With that simple gesture, I knew for sure his phone held a secret. I pretended not to notice. Only when he saw I was just reaching for the water did the tension in his eyes lift. Maybe feeling he had acted too obviously, he picked up his phone and stood up saying, "You eat first. I'll be right back. I need to go to the bathroom." I pretended to not see anything out of the ordinary and nodded with a smile. We'd just gotten our marriage certificate last month, and our wedding was scheduled for the end of the year. All our friends and family had been notified. I didn't want any scandals at this crucial moment, so I decided to observe carefully. After dinner, I started making our wedding invitations. Ethan sat beside me, looking at his phone. From the reflection on the TV screen, I saw him typing quietly. Just as I was about to ask him for help, he suddenly sat up straight. Without waiting for me to speak, he said, "Honey, Xiaozhang said there's an issue with a project. I need to go to the office. You can sleep first, don't wait for me, be good." He kissed me on the cheek, and without giving me a chance to speak, he quickly left. I stood by the window, watching him run to the car. It was already 9 p.m. I thought for a moment, and then called Xiaozhang. Xiaozhang sounded a bit panicked on the phone. Sis, the project." "Yes, there was a problem, and I just had Shuzhe come over to take a look." At first, I still had some hope for our 12-year relationship, but after talking to Xiaozhang, my hope shattered. What could have happened that made Ethan, who never liked to lie just to go out? Since then, I noticed he was coming home later and later. Even when he did come home, his words were formal and distant, and he'd always excuse himself to go to the bedroom saying he was tired. Sometimes, I woke up in the middle of the night to find him still on his phone. He even suggested we sleep in separate rooms because he had too much work to do and was afraid my poor sleep would disturb him. My heart had turned cold. Although there was no concrete evidence, the signs were clear. He was probably cheating. To get closer to the truth, I decided to stay silent for now. His team had indeed been working on a project, and he was busy with overtime. In the past, I would have understood, but now, I knew I couldn't let this continue. I started to bother him more often. For instance, today I went to the furniture mall, and at noon, I called him to come pick me up. His voice hesitated for a moment before he said, as usual, "Honey, find a cool place and wait for me." What made Ethan so clever was that, even though he no longer loved me, he still wouldn't let me suspect anything. He arrived quickly. As soon as I opened the car door, I smelled a faint, unfamiliar scent in the car. I pretended not to notice. After I sat down, I realized the front passenger seat had been moved. When I saw the focused and affectionate look in his eyes, I almost wanted to slap him right then. "My phone's dead. Can I borrow yours?" I smiled at him, and sure enough, his smile faltered for a second before he handed it over. I habitually unlocked his phone with my birthday, but after 3 failed attempts, the system locked it for 30 seconds. I just wanted to test him with the phone, but in the end, the one who was hurt was me. Before, I always thought the biggest mistake of my life was agreeing to be a full-time housewife when we got married. Ethan earned nearly 7 figures a year, which allowed me to live a relatively comfortable life. I was swept away by his sweet words, and, thinking about our 10 years together, I finally agreed to his decision. After quitting my job, I had plenty of time to prepare for our wedding, and, at first, felt lucky and happy that he still treated me well despite me having no income. Now, thanks to being a full-time wife, I had plenty of time to observe Ethan's every move. In the mornings, he'd kiss me after breakfast and I'd smile and indulge him. But once he left, I wiped the kiss off my face. The thought that his lips might have kissed another woman made me sick. I followed him out, heading south into the city. He drove into a gated community and I couldn't follow. I had to wait across the street at a cafe. In the morning, he told me he'd be in meetings all day and couldn't use his phone, but I had no idea his company had moved into a villa district. Thankfully, he didn't stay there long. About 10 minutes later, his car came back, but this time, there was a woman in the passenger seat. As she rolled down the window, I immediately recognized her. It was someone Ethan had once claimed to dislike: Hannah, one of his colleagues from the same batch, 2 years older than us. She had fallen for Ethan, and I'd often heard him mock her deep, emotional texts. I followed his car. Today was white day, and I saw Ethan and Hannah watching a movie, shopping, and walking hand in hand. They were acting just like an ordinary couple, sharing sweet moments, and Ethan was even letting her walk on the inner side of the road. Through the glass, I could see Ethan smiling, and that smile, so much more genuine than the fake one he wore with me, made my heart ache. There were moments when I wanted to confront him, to see his reaction when he was caught in the act, to see if he'd panic, feel guilty. But in the end, I didn't do it. Instead, I quietly took photos of their intimate moments. Then I called him. His footsteps faltered and he glanced at Hannah. She quickly smiled and said, "You can take the call. I'll step aside." Ethan pulled her close, and then he hung up on me, texting me right after. "Honey, I'm still in a meeting. I'll call you back when I'm done." Then he put his phone away and pulled Hannah closer, and they entered a hotel meant for couples. I felt as though I had been slapped hundreds of times. The humiliation and anger were overwhelming. I didn't have the courage to go inside. I was afraid of what I'd see, but reason told me I had to go in. The hotel wasn't fancy and the walls were thin. I could hear every sound from the next room. My husband with another woman. My heart twisted as I silently recorded their noises on my phone, fists clenched tight. I don't know how long it was before it finally quieted down. About half an hour later, I heard the door close. I still followed them. At noon, Ethan took Hannah to meet some of her friends. It felt like I was just an outsider, watching them enjoy their day, while I stayed behind the camera. Finally, I saw Hannah glance up and look directly at me. She wasn't surprised at all. In fact, she smiled at me, as if she were trying to show me that she wanted me to leave on my own. I looked at the photos I had taken earlier of my husband holding another woman's hand. I laughed bitterly at myself. I had always thought that if my marriage to Ethan ever fell apart, I wouldn't take advantage of it. But if the reason for the divorce was his cheating, then I wouldn't hesitate. I stared at the glaring wedding invitations on the table, the image of the two people closely embracing in the photos. I just wanted to burn them all. Suddenly, a knock at the door snapped me back to reality. I hesitated and walked to the door. It was already evening and I had no idea who would be visiting. Through the peephole, my vision blurred for a moment. Standing at the door was Hannah, smiling, dressed in a shoulder, bearing top and skinny jeans, simple yet stylish. She was confident, and compared to me in my loungewear, I felt out of place. I forced a smile and opened the door. "Hello, you must be Ethan's partner, Ava." Hannah greeted me cheerfully, handing me a fruit basket. "Who are you?" I pretended not to know her, standing in the doorway. "I'm Ethan's colleague. We've been working on a project together." "Ethan's been helping me a lot," she said, looking straight into my eyes, trying to get some sort of emotional reaction from me. It seemed like she wanted to know she had successfully disrupted my life. She continued, "Actually, Ethan's been so helpful to me since I joined the company. I thought I'd drop by and thank him today." "Is he not home?" I couldn't give her the satisfaction. I nearly crushed the doorknob, but I kept my composure. I took the basket and let her in. "Now that you mention it, I remember he used to complain when he got home, saying work was stressful and that there were too many problems. But I was puzzled as to why he had no good assistants." I smiled even more sincerely. I started preparing dinner, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Hannah admiring our wedding photos in the living room. After a while, she walked over and said brightly, "I'll help you out. It's boring being by myself. I love company, so don't treat me like an outsider. I'm very close with Shuyi." I fought the urge to slap her and handed her some muddy vegetables. "Ava, I won't be polite." She froze for a second. I continued, "Ethan's a people person, but my mother-in-law always says he's surrounded by bad company." Hannah stiffened, and I pretended not to notice. "But you, Ava, you're obviously not that type of person. You're older, more experienced, and wiser. But in today's world, not everyone has the decency to know their limits." Hannah fell silent, increasing the water flow in the sink. After a while, she changed the topic. "We always say Ethan's a family man because he has such a good wife. If it were me, I'd rush home after work too." My hand shook slightly as I held the spatula, about to speak when I heard the door open. Ethan's voice came closer. "Honey, I'm home." "What did you cook today? It smells..." He stopped in the doorway, and the house was suddenly deathly silent. I could tell Ethan was panicking. Looking at his pale face, I secretly felt satisfied and then smiled. "Surprised?" He looked stunned, panic written all over his face, and instinctively reached for me. I pretended to avoid him. Ava said thank you for all your help. Seems like you've turned her down several times, so she had to come to our house. I pushed him into the kitchen. You're just in time. You can chat with Ava. I'm going to the store to get some salt. I ignored them and went back to the bedroom. I turned on my tablet's recorder and quietly placed it on the dining chair, waiting for them to not notice. When I returned, Hannah was standing by the door, fully dressed and ready to leave. She looked at me with an apologetic face. Sorry, I wanted to try your cooking, but I just got a call from work. I'll come back another time. The joy in her eyes was impossible to ignore, and Ethan stood behind her, already back to his usual calm self. I pretended to keep her around a little longer, but eventually sent her out the door. Ethan waved at Hannah with a smile, acting as if nothing had happened. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have thought they were just ordinary friends. I didn't respond. She continued. Actually, Ethan's been so helpful to me since I joined the company. I thought I'd drop by and thank him today. Is he not home? I couldn't give her the satisfaction. I nearly crushed the doorknob, but I kept my composure. I took the basket and let her in. Now that you mention it, I remember he used to complain when he got home, saying work was stressful and that there were too many problems. But I was puzzled as to why he had no good assistants. I smiled even more sincerely. I started preparing dinner, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Hannah admiring our wedding photos in the living room. After a while, she walked over and said brightly, I'll help you out. It's boring being by myself. I love company, so don't treat me like an outsider. I'm very close with Shuyi. I fought the urge to slap her and handed her some muddy vegetables. Ava, I won't be polite. She froze for a second. I continued, Ethan's a people person, but my mother-in-law always says he's surrounded by bad company. Hannah stiffened and I pretended not to notice. But you, Ava, you're obviously not that type of person. You're older, more experienced and wiser. But in today's world, not everyone has the decency to know their limits. Hannah fell silent, increasing the water flow in the sink. After a while, she changed the topic. We always say Ethan's a family man because he has such a good wife. If it were me, I'd rush home after work too. My hands shook slightly as I held the spatula, about to speak when I heard the door open. Ethan's voice came closer. Honey, I'm home. What did you cook today? It smells. He stopped in the doorway and the house was suddenly deathly silent. I could tell Ethan was panicking. Looking at his pale face, I secretly felt satisfied and then smiled. Surprised? He looked stunned, panic written all over his face, and instinctively reached for me. I pretended to avoid him. Ava said thank you for all your help. Seems like you've turned her down several times, so she had to come to our house. I pushed him into the kitchen. You're just in time. You can chat with Ava. I'm going to the store to get some salt. I ignored them and went back to the bedroom. I turned on my tablet's recorder and quietly placed it on the dining chair, waiting for them to not notice. When I returned, Hannah was standing by the door, fully dressed and ready to leave. She looked at me with an apologetic face. Sorry, I wanted to try your cooking, but I just got a call from work. I'll come back another time. The joy in her eyes was impossible to ignore, and Ethan stood behind her, already back to his usual calm self. I pretended to keep her around a little longer, but eventually sent her out the door. Ethan waved at Hannah with a smile, acting as if nothing had happened. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have thought they were just ordinary friends. That evening, Ethan was unusually clingy. He even took the initiative to help me make wedding invitations and party favors. I smiled at him. You've had a long day. You should rest. I can do this on my own. I really didn't want him to mess up my things. Looking at his pretentious demeanor disgusted me. I gripped the paper cutter tightly, barely able to suppress the urge to make him disappear from my life. Ethan seemed to not hear me. He persisted in sealing the wax. After a while, he suddenly pulled me into his arms, his voice hesitant and uneasy. Honey, we'll be happy, won't we? If I didn't know about him and Hannah, I'd foolishly believe he truly loved me. I gave a perfunctory reply. He then offered a very transparent explanation. That was just the colleague I mentioned when I first joined the company. She's been growing a lot recently. Probably feels bad since I've been helping her so much. Ethan, in a tone that sounded like he was seeking credit, added, I've refused every meal she invited me to because I have a wife. I know my boundaries. Now, every word he said felt like noise. I was cutting the greeting cards angrily, seeing those pieces of paper as fragments of him. That night, Ethan insisted we go back to the master bedroom. I'm on my period today. I used an excuse to avoid contact with him. Every time I thought about his hands touching things they shouldn't, I felt the overwhelming desire to cut them off. I won't do anything. I just miss you, Ethan insisted, pulling me onto the bed. The moment his skin touched mine, a wave of disgust surged through me. I stiffened in his arms, listening to his breathing gradually slow down. Once I confirmed that Ethan had fallen asleep, I quietly grabbed my tablet and headed to the bathroom. From the recording, I could hear Ethan's voice, filled with anger. What's going on with you? What are you trying to do? If you keep this up, we're done. You've crossed the line. Hannah, I'm sorry, Ethan, I was wrong. I just love you too much. Ava was right. I've been so cheap. Hannah's soft sobs echoed through the speakers. Ethan seemed to soften, his voice turning gentler. Did she scold you? Hannah didn't answer directly, her sobs growing louder. Ava's really a good person. It's my fault. I didn't want to come today, but since that day when I impulsively asked you to marry me, you haven't cared about me. I'm so scared. In the next moment, I could hear them kissing. My stomach churned violently. Ethan's voice, muffled. As long as you don't leave me, I'll never leave you. Our bond goes beyond that piece of paper, chinking. You know I love you? I put the tablet down, wandered into the kitchen, and, touching the sharp knife under the moonlight, poured myself a glass of cold water. I silently uploaded the recording to my phone. It wasn't time yet. I needed to wait. Ethan observed me for several days, going to work on time every day. He even deliberately placed his phone in front of me to prove his loyalty. Eventually, after seeing that I remained indifferent, he stopped paying attention. That day he came home as usual, and while I didn't look at him, I could still feel his eyes on me. After a while, he cautiously said, "Honey, I'm going on a business trip to the neighboring city tomorrow for 3 days." I replied, "Oh? Is it for research?" He answered vaguely, "Yeah, just busy. You take care of yourself at home. If you miss me, send me a video." The truth was, I felt more burdened with him around. During this time, I also gathered information about Hannah. I found out she had a boyfriend back home, a lawyer named Logan. He came from a good family and they had already held a wedding ceremony, though they hadn't yet registered. Coincidentally, Logan had come to Hohat these past few days, and I decided to meet this man of the hour. I called Logan and briefly explained the situation. He didn't hesitate and agreed to meet. Compared to Ethan's handsome looks, Logan had a more rugged appearance. He didn't look like a lawyer but more like a bodyguard. "Hello," he greeted me before getting straight to the point. "You mentioned Hannah was involved in your relationship. Do you have any evidence?" I showed him the videos and photos I had taken. Logan, being a man of experience, showed no reaction. After reviewing the evidence, he thanked me calmly. "I understand. If you need anything in the future, don't hesitate to contact me. These pieces of evidence are an invasion of privacy and are legally invalid, but I'll help you with proof if necessary." When Ethan returned from his business trip, he looked worse than ever. I pretended to care for him, making him nutritious meals every day to boost his energy. "Has something gone wrong at work recently?" I asked knowingly. Ethan lowered his gaze to cover the dark circles under his eyes and casually said, "No, just a little busy." He then comforted me, patting my head. "Don't worry about me, honey." I forced a smile, gave him a few more reminders, and went into the kitchen under the pretext of cutting fruit. I knew Ethan hadn't gone on a business trip. The day before, it had been Hannah's birthday, and the two of them had probably gone out together. Now, when I thought about their time together, my heart felt strangely calm. Ethan still sat in the living room, looking upset. I went into the bedroom, pulled out a phone from the drawer, and opened a message where I had sent photos of Ethan and Hannah on a date to his boss. I had told his boss that if Hannah wasn't fired, I'd blow the matter up. I figured, businessmen weigh the pros and cons, and Hannah wasn't that capable anyway. From the living room, I heard Ethan's phone ring again. I quietly followed him as he tiptoed to the bathroom. As expected, I overheard Hannah's voice. "It's my fault, but I don't regret it. I'll lose anything for you. As long as it doesn't affect you, I'm not afraid of anything." This was unexpected. I had thought Hannah would lash out at Ethan, but she was far more composed than I imagined. Still, this didn't matter. The more considerate she was, the guiltier Ethan would feel, and the more he would suffer. My ultimate goal was to make him suffer every day. That night, Ethan came back to the master bedroom. Hearing him enter, I pretended to wake up and moved aside to give him room. "Did I wake you?" he asked, his tone less sincere but still polite. I shook my head, then casually said, "If you're free these next few days, maybe we can visit my parents. They've been asking about us. I noticed you've been stressed lately, so it might help to get out of the house." Ethan pursed his lips, his eyes full of conflict. It seemed like he had 1,000 things to say, but I acted like I didn't see it. Ethan's parents were experts at putting on a good face. Whenever I saw them, they'd call me daughter, but I knew that affection was all a facade. Ethan and I had fought before, and his mother had tried to rally the whole family against me. She constantly praised Ethan, blaming everything on me, even suggesting that if the dowry was too much, they should ask my family to pay more. This was also part of why I wanted to take revenge on Ethan. His family wasn't a good one. Maybe the pressure had gotten to Ethan. The next day after work, he told me, "Honey, I've taken a few days off from work. Let's visit my parents. Do you want to go to your family's place first or mine?" "Your place," I said with a smile. Since Hannah had shown so much restraint, I had to be even more considerate. Our hometown was about an hour's drive away from where we lived now. We didn't call ahead because Ethan wanted to surprise his parents. As expected, when they saw us, his mother immediately grabbed Ethan's hand and excitedly stuttered, "Son, you've lost weight. Is work stressing you out?" Then she turned to me, "Didn't you take care of him?" Though it was late, his mother still cooked a hearty meal. I could tell Ethan wanted to say something to his parents, but I deliberately ate slowly, allowing the tension to build. Afterward, I heard them talking in the next room, and I knew exactly what was being said. His mother mocked, "If it weren't for her family's money, would I have let my son marry her? She does nothing all day, uses my son's money, and still manages to make him look this way." Ethan's father quickly intervened. "Keep your voice down. She hear you." I sneered. Then I heard Ethan's voice, lowered to a whisper, "Mom, I don't want to marry her." I could hear Ethan's mother's voice clearly filled with suspicion. "You don't want to marry her? Is she making you angry again? I told you from the start I didn't want you two together, but you insisted. Now look at the mess you've got yourself into." Then she seemed shocked and added, "Didn't I notify everyone? The dowry was set, and your dad is about to get a promotion, so it will help you in the future." Ethan remained silent. His father continued, "It's your choice who you love, but don't let it affect the family's reputation. Just don't let anyone know. We can't afford the embarrassment." I couldn't help but laugh silently. It's clear that they were all as shameless as Ethan. Ethan didn't sleep in our room that night. When I woke up in the morning, only his mother was on the balcony, hanging up the laundry. She put on a fake smile when she saw me, though I could still catch the dissatisfaction in her eyes. "Good morning, dear. I've prepared breakfast. Go ahead and eat." I responded with a smile, maintaining the facade of a warm family moment. As I ate, I received a message from Ethan. "Honey, I'm going to dinner with Ivy and the others tonight. We haven't caught up in a while. We'll head back to your mom's tomorrow." Ivy was our college classmate. Since my house wasn't too far from Ethan's, I decided to head back home first. Ethan didn't contact me all day. I didn't want to focus too much on him anymore. Around 9 p.m., while I was lying in bed scrolling through Twitter, a post from Ivy suddenly caught my attention. It was a picture filled with warmth, showing 6 people gathered around a table, smiling brightly. Even Ethan, who hadn't smiled in a long time, had a faint smile on his lips. I recognized all 6 people in the photo. The only woman there, Hannah, was sitting beside Ethan smiling. Although they weren't physically touching, Ethan's body was slightly turned toward her. I was about to zoom in on the photo to examine it more closely when I was notified that the post had been deleted. Soon after, Ethan called. The background noise on his end was unusually quiet, not at all like the atmosphere of a gathering. "What are you doing, honey?" he asked. I tried to keep my voice normal. "Just washing up, getting ready to rest." Ethan asked again. "Not on your phone?" "Nope," I replied with a smile. "Did you finish your meal?" "Yeah," he answered. "Just got home. I'm going to take a shower and then sleep." After hanging up, something compelled me to drive to our new house to take a look. Before I left, I sent Ethan a message telling him I felt sick, but he didn't respond. I waited downstairs at the new house. A part of me still clung to a small hope. After all, we had been together for over a decade. Surely Ethan wouldn't bring his mistress into the home I had painstakingly built. Just then, a car's headlights shone from the entrance of the neighborhood and slowly stopped not far from my car. A man and a woman got out. It was chilly and hot in the evenings, especially late at night. I watched as Ethan took off his coat and draped it over Hannah's shoulders. The word tired was no longer enough to express my feelings. I didn't even have the strength to argue. Despite my frustration, I decided to call Logan. Soon, another car arrived at the neighborhood entrance. It was Logan. This time, he wasn't in a suit, but dressed in a simple sweatshirt and jeans, looking much more youthful. His figure quickly disappeared into the building. I waited downstairs. Before long, I saw the lights in our wedding house flicker on, and then a loud noise echoed through the hallway, triggering the motion sensor lights. More and more lights turned on, and people began to appear in the hallway. Taking advantage of the commotion, I went upstairs. I saw the door to our wedding house wide open, with Logan standing at the door, watching the two lovers inside, looking panicked. Hannah's face was still flushed and her hair was disheveled. As for Ethan, there were kiss marks on his neck and traces of lipstick on his lips. This scene didn't need any explanation. Everyone in the hallway knew exactly what was happening. Ethan's face turned from pale to dark red. He coldly tried to close the door, but Logan blocked him, saying, "The woman you're illegally cohabiting with is my wife. Perhaps she hasn't told you that we've already had a wedding." Ethan's complexion shifted from white to black. Seeing everyone holding up their phones, he still stubbornly insisted, "We're just ordinary colleagues. You have no evidence." I never realized before how stubborn he could be. Hannah's face flushed with embarrassment as she said, "It was just a wedding. We didn't register and we've already broken up." Logan raised an eyebrow. "The real issue here is that you've intervened in a legally protected relationship, and you'll bear legal consequences." As soon as Logan finished speaking, a woman suddenly rushed out from somewhere and slapped Hannah twice across the face. Ethan instinctively shielded Hannah in his arms. The crowd took pictures even more enthusiastically. I joined in, capturing the moment they were embracing, and then quietly slipped away. I waited downstairs for Logan. About 10 minutes later, the crowd dispersed, and Logan slowly came downstairs. He had intended to get in his car, but paused and walked over to me. It seemed he had noticed me when he arrived earlier. I felt a bit awkward. He approached my car, knocked on the window and said, "If you divorce now, the compensation you get will be the same as if you divorce after the ceremony." He gave me advice from a professional standpoint. I knew he was trying to help, as divorcing after just the registration would cause me less emotional damage. I shook my head. The wedding must proceed as planned. On the day of the ceremony, Ethan and Hannah's colleagues and leaders would be there, as well as his family. This was my only chance to publicly humiliate both of them. The pain they caused me would be repaid 1,000 times over. After speaking, I realized Logan was also a victim. Hiring him as my lawyer might have been cruel to him, so I stole a glance at him. "Don't look at me like that. I'm doing just fine," Logan smiled, having understood the meaning behind my gaze. "In fact, I should thank you." Standing up, he said, "I have some things to take care of. If you need anything, just let me know." As he got in his car, the girl who had slapped Hannah earlier bounced out from the shadows saying, "That felt so good, bro. I've avenged you." Then she swiftly jumped into the car. Our wedding house was in the old residential area, where most of the neighbors were colleagues of Ethan's parents. The next day, I purposely took a walk around the neighborhood. I don't know what kind of measures they had taken, but when the neighbors recognized me, none of them told me about Ethan's affair. I clicked my tongue. Such a family. It was truly despicable. As the wedding day approached, Ethan's smile became less frequent, and his time spent with me was even less than his smiles. Watching his face grow thinner made me feel much better. Tomorrow I'm scheduled to try on wedding dresses. Are you free? I called Ethan around noon. Before he could speak, I heard Hannah's voice first. "Ethan, is that Ava?" "Wife, the phone is on speaker," Ethan hurriedly explained. "We're in a meeting. Can I call you back later?" I took a few deep breaths and smiled. Was that Ava? I was just thinking, I should ask her if she's available to be my bridesmaid. You know, most of my friends are married and Ava seems to be still single. There was complete silence on the other end. Perhaps even Hannah didn't expect me to make such a move. She's not. Ethan instinctively wanted to refuse. Sure, Hannah agreed. And just like that, I strangely became friends with Hannah. I went to try on the wedding dress, and she carefully helped me adjust the straps, softly saying, Ava, I think our tastes are pretty similar. I like everything you have. She smiled at me, and it seemed sincere. I looked at her in the mirror. You have a beautiful smile. I also had her accompany me during the wedding rehearsal. I stood below the stage, watching her and Ethan standing together on stage, trying to find the right position for the wedding ring exchange. Hannah's gaze toward Ethan was full of deep affection, while Ethan's gaze kept avoiding hers, trying to look away but ultimately being drawn back to her. I sneered. This was the last moment of peace they'd have in their lives. In the blink of an eye, the wedding day arrived. I woke up early and followed all the scheduled rituals. People kept congratulating me, and as I thought about the scene to come, I honestly felt happy. After a busy morning, I finally arrived at the wedding venue around noon. By then, the hall was filled with guests, and the screen in the center was looping wedding photos of me and Ethan. I stood at the door, quietly watching everything inside. As the lights suddenly dimmed, the images on the screen changed. The wedding photos turned into pictures of Ethan and Hannah on their dates, and in hotel rooms. The room instantly fell silent. Even the MC was stunned. Ethan's parents were rushing to turn off the projector. Ethan stood frozen on the side of the stage, like a puppet. After the photos ended, the camera suddenly zoomed in on Hannah's face beside me. The next second, the speakers blared with sounds of her and Ethan's passionate cries during their lovemaking. His mother, overwhelmed, fainted right on the spot. I saw Ethan's boss storm out with a grim face, leaving only Ethan, whose eyes were hollow, staring blankly at everything before him. Amid the sudden bursts of gossip in the crowd, I quietly left. This absurd wedding of ours ended with the unique sound of 120 horns. I didn't see his family again. I only entrusted Logan to handle the relevant matters. Logan didn't say much during the process, but I knew that the compensation I received was nearly the entire fortune of his family. The next time I saw Ethan was on the day we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau for our divorce. It had only been a little over a month, but he had grown scruffy. He no longer looked like the charming man he once was. When he saw me, he rushed toward me as if he had lost his mind. Wife, please let me explain. I avoided his touch, disgust written all over my face. He stood there foolishly, his eyes even more vacant than on the wedding day. After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, he still tried to cling to me. I've broken up with Hannah, wife. Please give me another chance, okay? I heard that the events of the wedding day made it to the newspapers and slowly gained traction online. Hannah was being severely cyberbullied and even doxxed. She developed severe depression and was currently being treated in a psychiatric hospital. I frowned as I bypassed Ethan to get a taxi. Suddenly, a black SUV stopped in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing Logan's determined face. Get in. Without hesitation, I opened the car door and left Ethan standing there, dazed. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan's figure growing smaller and smaller until it disappeared, just like my love for him. I looked up and, unexpectedly, met Logan's slightly worried eyes. I smiled. Don't look at me like that. I'm feeling pretty good. Logan froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. I've always believed that misfortune is temporary, and that those who betray and break trust will never have a good ending.